Welcome to the Compliance Alliance Power Half Hour. And today we have two special guests with me. I have Jaime Reckhemmer and Parissa Snider. So happy to see you ladies. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.
So we're here to talk about machine learning, AI, and the trends that are happening right now. This is a big topic, and I think we're going to be able to dispel some myths. I think this can be an intimidating topic for some, like, oh, is AI going to take over in the classroom? And the answer is no. How is it going to supplement and really help the learning experience, the outcomes for the children? And that's why I've asked the two of you to come as the subject matter experts. Jaime, you is the founder of Aim for Impact Consulting, which does leadership and professional development training. But you also hold a special role, which I'll have you talk about in a moment, with WatchMeGrow, the Machine Learning Advisory Board. And then Parissa, you are the CMO. For those of you who don't know, that's Chief Marketing Officer, very important role for WatchMeGrow. So thank you, ladies, both for lending your voice and your expertise and your knowledge to today's conversation.
Thank you, Lynn, for having us.
So I'm going to start with you first, Parissa. For those that don't know about WatchMeGrow, which would be hard for people not to know about you, but I think it would be great because you've been doing a lot of things behind the scenes as well as some recent news. So just give us the elevator pitch of who you are as a company and how you serve early education.
WatchMeGrow is, you're right, a staple in ECE in the US and Canada. And the company started in the 90s when, the internet was new and streaming video meant JPEG images that looked a lot like stop motion animation. It's hard to recall days like that. Now, WatchMeGrow is known for being the software engine that runs cameras in early learning centers. And for so many years, cameras really could do surveillance, see what was happening in the classrooms all day, and for about 80% of our customers, stream to families and make that connection during the day so that they feel connected and focused and knowing that their little one is being cared for and getting the very best of everything all day. There's nothing that will build trust during a school tour more than saying you can use your phone and check in anytime you want.
Fantastic.
It's instant.
Fantastic.
Now we've shifted to taking that connection that's built through camera hardware and moving it into what kind of knowledge and data can schools get from their cameras that are on all day long, every minute that you're teaching in your school, without someone having to sit at a table and look through it. And it turns out it's a lot. It's a lot of data, a lot of knowledge that will do a lot of good. And that's what we'll talk about today.
Outstanding. So how did your two worlds come together? And maybe Jaime, you could lead off with that and tie it into the role that you play with WatchMeGrow.
Absolutely. So I have a long career in early education in the childcare space. Call myself a recovering childcare executive. And about a year and a half ago, the stars aligned and I was able to launch an independent consulting firm with the goal of putting all of my favorite things about early education into one job description. And one of the first, maybe the first day that I was out in the world, I was lucky enough to be attending an event with Parissa and her team from WatchMeGrow. And I was really excited to tell them about this work that I had been doing with their camera system for a client. I'd been viewing the camera and watching teachers and watching children and then putting together coaching plans based on observations. But our goal with the coaching plan from the very beginning was to be strengths-based and find all of the great things that teachers were doing to really be their cheerleaders and their champions. And it was just such wonderfully rewarding work, and I was having so much fun. And I sat down and started sharing those experiences with Parissa and John, and the light bulbs were just going off from the beginning because they were working on the same vision. How do we capture the best moments in classrooms and use those moments, not just to celebrate, but also to coach and really confirm what we know about early educators and that they're brilliant and that they're loving and caring and smart and thoughtful and all these amazing things. So we just started talking, and after a few really wonderful conversations, there was an opportunity for me to come to the table a little more formally through the creation of the Machine Learning Advisory Board, which I'm happy to tell you about, but I want to give Parissa a moment. Did I leave anything out?
You didn't. Yeah, what good fortune for us that we came across somebody who is such a subject matter expert in both the developing mind and the developing teacher. And it was exactly what we needed to do the work of finding out if the problem we think that we could solve with technology is actually a problem that needs to be solved.
Yes, yes. And we're going to pick up on that comment in just a moment, but let's talk about the Machine Learning Advisory Board. What's its purpose? Who is it made up of? Tell us about that.
Right. Well, one of the things that drew me to Watch Me Grow and Parissa and John and the team there was their absolute commitment to having early educators as part of the conversation from the beginning, right? So, our experiences have often been that technology has been created for us, and then we're told what to do with it. And that's very true in early education. But in this case, the vision that Watch Me Grow had was to have a tool that thought with all of the compassion and care and creativity that an early educator brings to the table. And so they empowered me to go find a group of early educators who were as interested and curious and as passionate as we were. And so with our various, relationships and connections and opportunities, assembled 15 early educators from across the space of an amazingly diverse group of teachers and coaches and administrators and consultants and regulators from, corporate childcare, agency-based work, nonprofit work. Like it couldn't have been a more brilliant group of people. And in addition to being super smart, they were also so willing to be boots on the ground. They dug in and literally labeled videos, right? Like the grunt work, because we needed the foundation of the tool to be shaped by the mind of an early educator, and that's what they were willing to do for us.
I love seeing women doing things, and it's not just a female board. I understand that, but the three of us here who have a passion about technology, the appropriate use of it, pioneering work. And that's another voice that I think you bring to the table. And you said something else, which helps dispel a myth, and that is the best moments. Because sometimes when we think of observations, we think of somebody scrutinizing the negative. And of course, you can address those, but you're really focusing in on the best moments.
Yes.
So, Parissa, back to you. What problem did you think you were solving or are solving with this project? And then if you can weave in where AI fits into this, because we haven't really labeled any part of this as AI yet.
No, we haven't. We haven't. The thing that we have been hearing as an ed tech company in ECE for the last, I don't know how many years, 100 years, it seems like, is pretty consistently teachers are burnt out. And it is really tough to find ways to support them. They have a very difficult job. What we know to be true anecdotally and from retention numbers is that too often teachers who are really gifted in early learning, who thrive in the classroom, who you can just look and see this is exactly where you belong, still unfortunately look at this job as a stopover job, as a placeholder job until I can go into the public school system or go on to do something else other
Mhm.
than this. And that doesn't do any of us a service, especially children between 0 and 5. At a time when 90% of your brain is developing, that gifted teacher is going to make all the difference. So the problem that we identified and we said, I think we can make an impact here, is finding the things that they do well and telling them. Directors know this intuitively. They walk by teachers all the time and say, this is my star because she's really great at small group instruction. And I've seen huge strides made in her classroom. But they don't know that with any data. They know that by intuition. And also they're managing an entire school. They're fielding calls and calls and notes from parents. They're hiring and coaching and doing all the things. And they may not have time to stop and say, this is what I saw you do today that was extraordinary. You belong in this classroom. But your cameras are on all day long, every minute that they're teaching. And we thought that we could fundamentally change pedagogy practices using that data, sensors, deep learning, artificial intelligence, so that we can summarize what's happening, summarize it well and accurately, and then hand that over to directors, operators, corporate support teams, regional directors to say, look, these are all of the teachers that you should be nurturing to stay and keep a career with your company, because that's who's going to be your director of next year, mentors for new teachers. Um, you can't improve what you can't measure.
That's right.
And no one is measuring to that degree what's happening in the classroom.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we think that we can.
Yeah, the traditional kind of formula for observation and assessment in early education is a human being doing the observation and writing down a lot of notes, and then compiling those notes and maybe feeding back a little bit, but it's a point in time and it happens so infrequently. Like, most state QRIS systems are annual at best, but oftentimes every 3 to 5 years. But like Parissa said, the cameras are running all day long. And so if the cameras can capture these brilliant moments, identify them through the lens of an early educator as trained by the Machine Learning Advisory Board, and then provide some really simple data around frequency and duration and consistent patterns and such, not only can the teachers be uplifted by that, but they can also be affirmed and create growth plans and see the progress that they're making the same way that we track those types of outcomes for kiddos, right? Like we do it for kids all the time, and yet we never really thought about how critical it was for a lifelong learner like an
Yeah.
early educator. And so the tools create this consistent, efficient, um, just beautiful way of recognizing all the good things teachers are doing.
And I can directly see how this would impact teacher retention, because what you've implied, and I'll make it explicit, is it's a sense of connection. I belong because this is how I contribute to the learning environment. So there's connection because everyone wants to feel connected and valued for what they uniquely bring. And the data, like you said, this is something that can be pulled because it's already there with the camera system. So that connection piece just really speaks to the heart of how do we help retain teachers and the value that they bring. So it's not a stepping stone, it's actually part of the career ladder for them to stay with the school, with the brand. Let's get techie for a second. How does this happen? Okay, so you've got the cameras running, peel back a layer here. What's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, the cameras are running, and a part of artificial intelligence is computer vision, and it's exactly what it sounds like. We can train a software model to recognize children and adults by their size. And once they do that, once we can accurately decipher who's a child and who's an adult, then we can train the model to look for patterns in their interactions between each other.
Mhm.
Now, this isn't just a room full of engineers deciding these are the interactions that I want to measure, which is probably the cornerstone of why this works so well, because we have engineers in a room talking about how to optimize a model, an algorithm for computer vision, but we have Jaime and the Machine Learning Advisory Board in the same room talking about what the interactions actually mean and which ones to measure, and then using their knowledge and experience to train the model to show the computer software that this is an example of affection. This is not an example of affection. This is an example of one-on-one instruction. This is not. So that in the end, we want to have Jaime's experiences and the 16 members of the Machine Learning Advisory Board's experiences informing the data that we pull from the school to measure. Otherwise, it wouldn't be valuable.
Right.
The only thing that makes it valuable is that the computer can act as Jaime, as an experienced coach, as a regional director.
And Lynn, I am not a techie. Like, it was part of my dream to be more engaged with ed tech. And so when I was building this beautiful job description for myself as a consultant, I gravitated towards technology and innovation, which is where I think those things are married. But what the first kind of aha moment I had in working with Parissa and the technology team at WatchMeGrow was this awareness that in order to train the computer vision model, you have to have many, 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 many instances of these interactions or affections or group instructions that have some similarities, right? That we can identify, and then you feed these many, 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 many examples into the model, and it begins to learn because it repetitively sees these characteristics of these positive events, right? And so two things. One, it made sense so quickly why the very best approach was to look for all of the positive things, because it's the positive things that are happening in abundance in our early education classrooms. You know, we were able to collect many examples of these positive interactions, and those examples were confirmed by the Machine Learning Advisory Board. But it also explained why this vision around strengths-based technology and positive interaction and patterns of positive best practice, dare I say, compliance, right?
Yes.
Because these are the things that are happening so frequently. We don't have enough examples of the opposite to train a tool, thank goodness, right? We're never going to have that many examples of icky things, thank goodness. So, focusing on the best part made the project not only brilliant, but also easier at least.
Yeah. Well, and I can see how, like you said, emphasizing many, because this is a data set that you're looking for the trends and for it to be replicated, and that takes many interactions and it takes time. So this is something that just was birthed overnight, clearly. And is this available now through WatchMeGrow? Is this a product somebody could purchase, a school could purchase right now?
The observations feature that we're talking about today is still in R&D.
Okay.
We expect that it will be available for our customers to try in the fall. And we are counting the days until we can get it into a school and get the data in the hands of directors and teachers, because only then will we really start to make the improvements
Yes.
that'll make this thing very useful.
So if you could just unpack that a little bit further. Yes, I appreciate the diligence to not just rush a product to market. I have a career in technology and I've seen that done well and I've seen it done poorly. So the due diligence and the thoroughness to make sure the value is there. When it is in the hands of early education leaders, coaches, et cetera, will they get a report? Like, what is the thing that they will be able to use to help improve the learning environment or the interactions?
Yes, it is. It is a report and supporting materials to the level that they wish to have it. So
Mhm.
imagine going in the morning as a director and looking on a dashboard where you can see by classroom what kinds of interactions are happening most frequently and how they're changing over time. So for the last 4 weeks, you've had a pretty consistent same two teachers in one classroom, and you can see that they are, having the same instances of the same numbers of affection and group instruction and one-on-one interactions consistently over the last several weeks. If you are impressed with this, and we should be, you can click into it and directors can have short clips, examples of these moments that they can then share with the teachers and say, not only do I see the good work that you're doing, I'm going to show it to you so that you can reflect on what went well here, what you'd like to do differently next time. But maybe just the most simple benefit of all is we all like to be told that you're doing a great job and that we notice. And this is a really effective vehicle for that.
I am so excited. I wish we had a whole nother half hour because my mind just went into 6 other areas that I'd like to ask. We're going to have to save that for a second episode. But because we are the Compliance Alliance, I'd be remiss in not bringing this together with where do you see the connection when we talk about compliance? And there's more than one stakeholder when we talk about compliance. We have spent a tremendous amount of time and energy and support from people like Jaime, who also sits on our advisory board at the Compliance Alliance, but helping compliance to be a positive word. So back to that best moments, compliance is also, we want to elevate that for our stakeholders. So if I can frame this up and then have you both sound off on one or more of these, when we talk about stakeholders, we talk about leadership, we talk about staff, we talk about, our teachers, obviously, we talk about parents, we talk about licensing, which is where we tend to think of compliance. We also talk about our community because our stakeholders are our external community as well. And then also we've got insurance and we've got financial stakeholders. So compliance has a far-reaching impact, and I imagine the work that you're doing is far-reaching across those areas. Both of you, maybe just a back and forth, where do you see the greatest impact when it comes to stakeholders, and how would you frame that up?
Well, I'll start, but I'm going to take the easy one. Because, the bulk of my work in the industry was around compliance with licensing and regulations and standards, and then also with QRIS. And the difficult, element of that for me was always that regulators and quality staff see a moment, a snapshot of what's happening in our classrooms or what's happening in our programs. And and most often, unfortunately, those moments, might be critical moments or, possibly non-compliant moments. And as much as we would tell our positive story without the data and documentation of those best practices and positive patterns, it was just a story, right? And so immediately, I see this as a brilliant way of collecting the story of greatness in our programs and showing the patterns of compliance and the patterns of positive interactions and the patterns of best practice, to really balance the scale when it comes to regulation and QRIS. But that extends itself into a concept into all areas of the business, creating patterns of compliance around anything that we can capture on film. Maybe it's our customer service, right? Maybe it's our health and safety. Maybe it's our simply being compliant with compliance, right? The pattern of checklists and those types of things. But again, we're solving the problem for no one person has time to collect and do all the things. So if we can capture the data as it's happening in real time, efficiently and accurately and objectively without bias, what a brilliant resource that is to tell the true story of the good work that we're doing.
Yeah, well said. I want to talk about consistency too.
Okay.
Insurance companies, and I know, Lynn, this is a topic that you and your clients have been talking about a lot lately and maybe for several years. They are being asked to make some pretty high stakes decisions on coverage and renewals and premiums based on information that is largely reactive or perhaps outdated. And that's not a system that is built for clarity and forward-looking purpose. That's a system that's built to spot fires. And we need to see a shift. So this is the kind of tool that can give insurers a proactive, like Jaime said, pattern-based view of risk, not just whether something went wrong 6 months ago or 2 years ago, and that's going to impact your insurability and your premiums, but how consistently your business operates, at what level of quality, at what level of safety, and that means data, surfacing data that shows compliance, shows what's effective, and shows trends. This
Yes.
is a way to differentiate between a school that is, that had a one-off incident, and it was just that, it was isolated, and one that's fundamentally struggling and needs something different.
Yeah. And our parents get a similar one moment in time when they stream in or when they are on site at drop off or pickup, or maybe they come for a volunteer event or a conference. They're still just getting a very, very brief look at what happens in a classroom. And today's parent is conditioned to make data-driven decisions, right? We are fed data about everything in our lives these days, and it's in the palm of our hands, in our phone. We know how many steps we've taken, how much sleep we got, how many calories we've tracked, and just our social media feed knows what we're talking about, right? And so they're just data-driven folks. And so if we can feed back to them data around affection, interaction, if we can show them teachers who are invested not just in their kids, but in themselves, because they're choosing professional development based on this data that we're providing. And if it can be supported with very intentional video clips, right? Again, when they stream into the cameras, they have no idea what they're looking at. And it's so easy to make assumptions, but if we can snip these best moments and then use those best moments to inform and educate our families and Lynn, our community,
Yes.
right? Our community, unfortunately, oftentimes sees the worst of early education in our media. And we'd like to shift that narrative to the best of what's happening in early education. But we need documentation and we need data in order to do that.
Yes. As a working parent and a parent whose child was in care, the day is spent with the teachers, right? And for those of us who, at the end of the day, those interactions, again, it's about connecting with your community, but also, what if I then apply those same things that I'm observing in the classroom to home, right? So the learning extends beyond what's happening at the school to what's happening at home or with other caregivers. I mean, I love that. The other thing that you said that really hits home with our audience is typically we are, when it comes to licensing and insurance, it is historical point in time. And we're also introducing the language of risk management. it's like how, and unfortunately, we have to talk a little bit about the negative side of this, but how bad could it have been? But your trending data indicates it probably wasn't as bad as you might have imagined, because our investors tend to look at risk of, oh, wait, they had this citation, a child was left unsupervised. No. That happened at a point in time. This is what we do as a best practice in our schools. Here's the data that supports it. And my dream for the industry, using what you all are doing, which I'm just ecstatic about it, is imagine a day where, in addition to the stakeholders, but we can actually help reduce premiums, where insurers give them almost like a safe driving discount, where it's like, you've got a safe observations discount, or
Yes.
whatever that language will be, to help lower the cost and make it feel less risky, because we are doing all these best moments things, and we're going to have the data to tell everybody about it. So I want to get my hands on an early version of this. I don't run a classroom, but boy, I am very energized and encouraged by where this is going. Thank you both for coming on and sharing what's happening and how we can watch that work. What's the web address for WatchMeGrow?
WatchMeGrow.com.
Hey, that's straightforward.
Easy.
For the Compliance Alliance, it's ececompliance.com. Straightforward, and you can find this episode and other resources that'll be coming from our relationship with WatchMeGrow. So thank you, ladies, for your time today.
Thank you, Lynn. This was
Lynn.
fun.
Yes.